This is Creative Banter. What does apple juice, iced tea, and a water wagon, whatever that is exactly, have in common? About as much as they have to do with photography, which isn't much. But that's the fun of it, right? This week, we're talking about healthy habits, kayaking, and following rules. We also discuss Ben's 2023 print portfolios and the release of Nature Vision magazine's third issue. And I make the mistake of using a dirty word to describe what Ben is to many people. Let's dive right into this, shall we?
Take one final sip of decaf here.
Yeah.
Get me energized.
I got my nice little ice water aside of me. I've fallen back into the apple juice and iced tea kick that I gotta try and get away from. So that's lovely.
Like combined?
No.
Is that,
No.
Okay. Well, like I haven't heard of that before. I don't know. Maybe that's a thing. I'm
really
not sure.
Weird Arnold Palmer, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know.
No, not combined. Just yeah. I don't know how that would taste. Peach iced tea or raspberry iced tea with apple juice.
I would think that the apple juice would overpower everything and anything.
Probably. And talk about a sugar high. That would be rough.
I used to live off that stuff as a kid, and I'm sure that like hummingbirds would also appreciate it because there's a lot of sugar in there. It's just hummingbird food pretty much.
My girlfriend likes to have it just for a break from water or from soda or whatever. So we get the big jugs of Mott's apple juice.
Yeah.
And so we have those, and because I'm home all the time, I drink it the most out of the two of us. And I'm like, I really shouldn't be. Like, I've fallen off my water wagon a bit, so I got to get back on that. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and picturing a water wagon, I'm picturing like a jacuzzi in the back of a truck. So that would actually be kind of fun to hang out in a water wagon.
That's true. But when I picture that, it's more of like a really shoddy like ordeal where you have a beat up kind of truck in a poor neighborhood that's just like, this is the kids' pool, and you just drive around the neighborhood and trailer park and that kind the water's leaking out the sides. You have to keep refilling it every house.
Just sloshing around, dropping a few kids out. Yeah,
exactly.
I think the last time I had apple juice was like a hotel breakfast when they have like the little breakfast in the morning.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, oh, apple juice, I'll have some of that. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. Okay, I'm good for another 20 years or so. I don't know. I think I've just become like stuff that's like very sugary. I'm just like, I think I've reached a stage in my life where just extreme moderation. So a little bit of that certainly goes a very long ways.
Yeah,
but I definitely enjoyed it as a kid.
Yeah, when it comes to my diet, as we've talked about in prior episodes and everything like that, I keep telling myself that I need to eat healthier, that I need to drink mainly water, that like kick the little sugary snacks and habits that I have, and I can't manage to do it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help that I'm home all the time. So like during the summer, if I'm able to be outside and doing stuff around the house or going for hikes or that kind of deal, then I don't snack as much and I don't eat as like poorly. But when I'm at the house and it's crappy outside and it's like today it's 30 some degrees outside. It was flurrying this morning. All I want to do is just sit at my computer, watch the puppies play together and just eat snacks.
Yeah.
Which isn't a good combination.
Yeah. One of the things that I've learned is if you have a snack that's very protein dense, man, it fills you up, and then there's like no desire to really have much of anything to eat after that. Whereas if I'm like if I'm craving something, I might just have like a protein bar or something like that, and it'll just leave me feeling so full that afterwards I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I don't have any desire for anything else. So that's been sort of my go-to, whether it's some nuts or like a protein bar or something like that.
Yeah, I gotta figure that kind of stuff out. Just like essentially replace all of the shitty snacks in the house with like protein snacks, like protein bars or nuts or anything. I have a bunch of nuts, and I made this mix before I went hunting up for the weekend after Thanksgiving, and I was munching on that for a bit, and that was good. But then I get home, I'm like, ooh, goldfish. or Reese's Cups. Like, those would be even better.
Yeah.
It's not good.
Yeah. So speaking of the less than ideal weather that you're having there, past weekend, my wife, we went kayaking on a lake here in San Diego in our nice weather. And so my wife, one of her coworkers recently got a kayak. So the three of us went to this lake to go out on the water, and it was a really nice day. It was probably maybe about 70 or so, but just the water was really calm. It was a pretty big lake that we went to. And so we have these kayaks, all three of us. They're the folding kayaks, the Oru kayaks. And so the ones that my wife and I have, they take a little longer to put together, but they're also a little bit bigger kayaks. So my wife's coworker put his kayak together and we're kind of on the shore getting ready to launch. And I was putting together my kayak. My wife was putting together her kayak. And then she got everything ready, and she got in her kayak, and I just kind of pushed her out into the water because otherwise it's kind of a pain to kind of, scoot yourself out. And so her and her coworker were, I don't know, maybe 50 feet out. They weren't that far out. And then I start getting in my kayak and start doing the little scoot to kind of get myself in the water.
Yeah.
And my wife was going to take a picture of me or a video of me or whatever as I'm kind of scooting in the water. And she reached into her pocket and her phone wasn't there. And so it was kind of like, well, that's weird because we just had it on the shore. I mean, we're just putting the kayaks together. I remember she had her phone sitting there. She put it in her pocket and then paddled out, and then it's gone. And so I kind of go back. I'm like, oh, maybe it's in this kind of light brown colored case that also has her credit cards and stuff like that in there. And so I'm thinking maybe it's just sitting on the shore, and just because it's kind of brown, it kind of blends in. And so I go back there and it's not there. And she had it on the shore, and then she doesn't have it in the kayak. So we're thinking maybe it kind of fell into the kayak somehow when she was getting in or something like that. And we kind of she went back to the shore, and we're kind of reaching around there, see if it was under anything. And, no one could have stolen it or anything because no one was there. And then I pulled up on my phone the Find My feature, and it gave this kind of a large radius. And then my wife's like, well, the only possible explanation is if it's in the water, but I don't know how that could be. So she paddles out and starts looking down, and this is it's not the greatest visibility in this lake. There's a little bit of sediment in there, and the bottom of the lake has it's kind of like the gooey junk that grows on the rocks and stuff.
Right.
And she's paddling around, and then she looks down and she sees her phone down on the bottom of the lake. It's probably about 7 feet down. And so we're thinking that maybe somehow when she's getting the kayak, it kind of popped it at a weird angle. Then paddling out, somehow it worked its way out of the kayak, which is, it's kind of like those once in a million things. And then we're just kind of paddling around it, well, we got to get to it. But the lake water is really cold. It's a drinking water reservoir where they don't allow you to go swimming or anything.
Right.
But we're alongside this dock, and some of the workers there were kind of looking at us and saying, hey, did you drop something? And then my wife said, yeah, my phone fell down there. And then the lady that was working there said, is there anything there that's metal that, because I have this magnet on a rope that you can drop down. And we're thinking it's a brand new iPhone 15. And we're thinking, it's got that MagSafe connector on it for charging. So it's got to have a magnet in there. So sure enough, she hands me this. It looks like a small dumbbell sized magnet, and it's heavy. I mean, it's probably 5 pounds or something like that. And then I'm kind of go over the top of it, and I slowly lower it down. And I think I've got it. So I start kind of hauling it back up, and it's just a magnet. It's not enough to grab onto the phone. And meanwhile, I'm kind of drifting around. It's hard to stay over the top of it, and then you lose sight of it because it's, like 7 feet down. And then as we're doing that, at some point, I think my kayak and my wife's kayak are next to each other, and there may have, like, I bumped her, she bumped me, something, and then she tumbles into the water. And so she's got a life vest on, so she kind of like swims to the shore, and I kind of push the kayak in, and we get that inverted, and she's just sitting there like soaking wet. And so then we're thinking, now if I can at least drop the magnet where it's pretty close to it. And then the people on the dock said, we'll give you permission if you want to go in and get it. And so my wife's like, I'm already soaking wet. So if you just drop that magnet where it's near it, then I can follow the rope down because it's limited visibility. Mm-hmm. So she jumps in the lake, swims down about 7 feet, follows the rope down, reaches around, finds the wallet, and it comes up with it to the top. And it had been down there for about a half hour or so. It had been there for a while. But she got it back, and the phone still works.
Oh, nice.
So when they say that the waterproof rating is, we looked it up afterwards. They said a half hour at, I think they said 6 meters, which is, significantly deeper than it was down. But yeah, when she has something in her mind, like, I'm gonna get this back. There's, nothing's gonna stop me. So the fact that she dove into that lake and swam down, 7 feet or so to go get the phone worked out. And then afterwards we went kayaking, and she was able to dry off and stuff. But yeah, so whenever they say, that the phones have a good rating, they really do. And it still works. So that, at least had a rather happy ending to it.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's, yeah. That whole, not being allowed to swim in certain waters and that kind of thing reminds me when my girlfriend and I went up to Acadia this past summer. We went on, and I'm always in charge of like planning out the hikes and figuring out where to all go and all that fun stuff, to the detriment of my girlfriend, who often doesn't want to do like heavy hikes one day after the other. Mm-hmm. And because I don't know that area that well, I'm just going based off some recommendations or this little guidebook that I had gotten. And I remember we went to this one set of trails, and it surrounded a lake. And it was one of those lakes that you could kayak in and everything, but you couldn't use like gas motors or swim in because it was like protected water. It was used for drinking water. Yeah. And as we're hiking around the one day, we see a group of people, older individuals, that went off in their kayak, and then they must have went out a bit and then turned like left out into where the water really opens up, then stopped by some rocks to like sunbathe, that kind of deal. And the trail ends up passing right by where they were. And you just see these older people they're just swimming around, just enjoying the water. Like, guys, there's signs all over for that. Yeah. I get it, but at the same time, like, there's a reason for that. But yeah, I don't know. Just nice.
Do you consider yourself to be a rule follower by nature?
For the most part. I mean, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, same here. I don't know. I think just it's for the betterment of society for the most part. I mean, it's also easier, There's a rule, you follow it. There you go.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It takes the thinking out of it,
There are certain like rules, like speed limits especially, that I'm like, this just doesn't feel right. So I'm gonna go with what feels right and just hope I don't get caught. But like, there's a road not far from me that I go on all the time going to the gym. And I think it's because there are two churches on this road that the speed limit is so much slower than it should be. I think the speed limit's like 25. All the other roads around it are 45. Yeah. And so you hit this road, and all of a sudden you're like just crawling along. I'm like, maybe this isn't a good rule. But
yeah. Like, when it comes to driving, man, I don't know. And maybe it's because my the speedometer on my car. I mean, there's like the analog one, which I never really look at. I look at the digital one, which is just, tells you exactly how fast you're going.
Oh yeah, you have one of those fancy cars, or the digital ones.
My fancy 10-year-old car. Yeah.
I mean, mine's 10 years old too, and doesn't have that. But
that's true. Yeah, and well, that's the thing too, because like when I drive my wife's car, she doesn't have the digital display for the speed, and so I have to look down. I'm like, okay, I think I'm going 35 or so. But when I have the numbers on my speedometer, like I can look at that, and I don't know, I almost take pride in like matching it exactly to the speed limit. And this is more so like in like residential areas and stuff. Like if the speed limit, like kind of near my house, there's one area where it's 35 miles an hour, and then there's a stop sign that's 30 miles an hour. And I will obey that exactly, just because it's like almost like an OCD thing in terms of like, it's 35, I'm going to have it exactly 35. And then we go through a stop sign, it's 30, I'm going exactly 30. And drivers hate me. They hate me because I'm not going fast enough for them. And I almost take a little bit of pride when they get like frustrated at me and kind of annoyed at me. I'm like, dude, it's 30. I'm going 30. It's a residential area. It's,
residential areas, I can understand that. But for me, I'm like a solid 5 over, which is still within the law. I'm still legally allowed to do that. But when I get behind someone that's doing exactly the speed limit, like driving behind you, especially on like back roads around me, I would go crazy. Be like,
do they have those the signs where you live where it's it says speed limit 30, and then there's an electronic display that says your speed?
Yeah, here and there they do.
Do you ever try to match those?
No. No.
Like for me, like my goal is like when I pass it, it's got to say exactly what it is. So like I'll orchestrate the you're not usually hitting the brake, but you let off the gas just enough. And if it says like, oh, speed limit 35, and it says I'm going like, 34 or 36 when I pass the sign, I'm like, next time I'll get it right.
So you have quite a competitive drive, not just in your, not just with cycling, but also with signs.
Yes, a competitive drive for accuracy.
Drive for accuracy. Nice.
Yeah. That could be a name for the podcast episode. I don't know. We'll we'll see on that one. But actually, speaking of cycling, so I've been busy this week mailing out the print portfolios, and as we were talking about just before we started recording, I've mailed out 115 of the 124 pre-orders, and I've just been doing that all week. So we're recording this on a Thursday, and it's been a bit monotonous all week, just going through all the orders and doing that. But the one thing that I've been trying, that I've saved as a motivating factor, is that tomorrow, if I can get all these in the mail, which I should be able to, tomorrow I want to go on a pretty long ride, just as like that carrot that I'm dangling.
Yeah.
And so I do think it's kind of funny how, for me, the motivation to get all the work done is to hop on a bicycle and ride like 80 miles or so. Whereas I think for a lot of people, they'll be like, so I gotta wear spandex and ride 80 miles on a bike. This is torture. This is not a reward. But I don't know. For me, that's kind of the motivation, just because I've been cooped up all week, busy at work on things. But I also don't like having things hanging over my head. And so having all the orders that are in place, every time I'm able to complete one of those, it gives that little bit sense of satisfaction in terms of, one step closer to being done with all that work. So that's what I've been working on this week. What have you been up to?
Well, before we get into that, I'm curious, when you're doing these, like packaging your portfolios, and even when you're printing them, putting everything together, what are you doing to not go crazy? Because I
mostly just go crazy.
Okay. All right. That explains quite a bit then. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I do I'll take breaks. I'll go outside and I'll water the garden in the front yard. I'll I get enough of them packed up, then I go to the post office and the FedEx place and drop stuff off and come back and get some degree of variety. But for the most part, it's just, there's not much that one can do to break up that work other than just having the satisfaction of, I have the spreadsheet. I used to keep track of everything. And so that tells me, what all is in that order and everything. And so every time I pack one up and print the label and stuff, I can basically check that one off. So there's a little bit of a satisfaction that comes with that. But beyond that, it really, I just end up going crazy. That's kind of the short of it.
Are you listening to music while you're doing it, or YouTube videos or anything to keep your, at least have something else to watch?
Yeah. Usually I'll have the radio on in the background, or I'll have some music playing, stuff like that.
Okay.
And on the plus side, though, at least this whole week has been beautiful weather. Where I take a look outside the window and there's blue skies and there's breeze and stuff.
Must be nice.
Yeah. It is. But so at least there's that. Though also that isn't necessarily the greatest thing, just from the standpoint that I look outside, I'm like, man, I wish I could be out there.
Yeah, that's true.
But I'm in here. So if it was like a stormy day and it was windy and rainy and cold outside, I wouldn't have anything else to do other than just to work on the orders. So, pros and cons.
Yeah. I mean, I ask because anytime that I'm doing something that's monotonous that I would otherwise go crazy doing, even like the podcast, how I've talked in the past about playing my game when I'm editing the podcast, I need to have something else. Like I'll watch YouTube videos typically, I always stock up on YouTube videos to watch, whether they're yours or like Matt Day or anyone else, just in a watch later playlist. And then when I'm doing some kind of monotonous task, I'll just throw those on and just listen to them as I'm doing whatever. Just makes the time go by a little bit faster, and I think, at least. So
yeah, I think for me, listening to some stuff on the radio works pretty well for that, because it can be just kind of in the background a little bit. I can tune in, tune out of it as necessary.
Right.
I think if there was anything visual, it would just serve as a distraction.
Yeah.
I think anything like that, it's got auditory stuff I'm pretty good with, but yeah, if it was like some videos or whatever, if it's just listening to it as audio, I could see that. But otherwise, I think it would just break up the sort of the rhythm that I get into when getting the orders packed. And I'd probably just start making mistakes and start sending people cats and stuff.
Sure you haven't done that already yet? Make sure you have all your cats in one basket?
I don't know where they all are right now.
Oh boy.
All 17 of them. But some people listen to this like, he has 17 cats.
Yeah, really. I've only seen the 2.
Now it's 16. Yes.
Oh, yeah. My week has been pretty slow so far, actually. The layout is finished for the magazine, so that was the biggest thing for me to get done.
Yeah, I know that you were working really hard on that to get all that out of the way.
Yeah, I have, let me pull up how many hours I put into that. Quite a few. About 15 hours, I think, into it.
Oh, wow.
So, and that's doing layout, that's doing little tweaks here and there too and everything.
Yeah.
Like rearranging an interview. The interview that we have for this one is with Colleen Minnick. And,
oh, nice. Yeah, she's a great photographer.
Yeah, she's great. She's a great person to talk to as well. She ended up giving us so much to work with. Normally with these interviews, I'll ask a range of like 8 to 12 questions. And when I'm writing up these questions, I'm kind of trying to think of things that are a little bit outside the box that aren't really asked very often. Like with Alex Noriega, he had posted it on Instagram about his fascination with the sky and with like the stars and all that kind of stuff. And so I kind of tried to dive into that a little bit just to get something different, show your personality a little bit more outside of photography. And with Colleen, she answered all 12 of my questions that I gave her, and she really answered them. Like,
wow.
We have what was it, like a 7,000 word document from her answers. That was, and so that took a little bit of figuring out how to lay it out and everything. But I think we figured out a way to do it that it takes up a lot of space, but it's at the very end instead. So if people want to read through all of it, they can, but it's not like split up or anything. But yeah. So finished up layout. And by the time that people are listening to this episode, they will be able to get their hands on the magazine if they want it. It should be out on the 13th of December, I believe is our date for it.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, other than that, I started watching and connecting a little bit through email with a photographer, Brian Burks, who is a large format portrait photographer. He's done a couple assignments for the New York Times, and he's got he has his own YouTube channel that I've been listening through just to kind of get to know him a little bit better, get to know his photography. He's a big fan of your work. Put that out there. Cool.
I like him even more now.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's funny too, because there's like a small group of like influencers. We'll put you in that category for a minute here. Yeah. I know you're gonna love it.
Yeah, I can tell already.
But like certain photographers, like you, like Matt Marash, Alex Burke, they're the individuals who are using large format film that it's just influenced people like me, like Brian, like people who didn't necessarily grow up in the film era or anywhere close to it, but have influenced us to getting into large format. I think that plays a big part there.
That's cool.
So been listening to watching his YouTube videos a little bit and trying to make connections here and there. And then other than that, I got the little sample pack just today from Smart Press of their papers. So I was flipping through that a little bit before we got on here. So
yeah, that's and that's something I think we had. I think it was after we recorded last week or something like that. When I had mentioned about getting the sample pack to get a feeling for the different papers that are out there, because that's what I used to make the zine. And also I was just thinking that the zines arrived last Friday, so we haven't recorded since they showed up. But Smart Press did a great job on them. So it's the perfect bound booklets. I'm using their 100% recycled paper. I don't remember which weight paper it is, but it's basically the thicker paper that I can use for the cover, and then the thicker paper that I can use for the inside. But they really did a nice job. The print quality is great. With the recycled paper, it's an uncoated paper. And so I just like the feel of that paper a little bit better. It has more of a tactile sort of feel to it. And it was interesting because the print that is included in the premium zine, which is this sort of crumbled white rock from Death Valley, it's also used on the cover in kind of up in the corner. But when I've been packing the zines, I'll have like the stack of the zines and then the stack of those prints that are included with it for the premium one. And so I'm looking at that same image printed on the cover as well as, the actual inkjet, and they're actually a pretty close match. So it's pretty nice. I mean, when you consider it's a different sort of paper and all that, but the accuracy is quite good. There's a couple minor things that I'll adjust when I do the next one for next year. With this style of binding, it's the gutter. So when you open the page spread, the area where it folds in the middle, it does suck some of the image down into that. And one thing that they say you can do is you can basically adjust the image in two halves over the spread so that like there's some redundancy there. Mm-hmm. So when you open it up, even though some of it's hidden, you can still see the whole thing pretty well. And I'll probably tweak that. But also I was careful with the placement of the images so that important parts weren't really in that gutter anyways.
Yeah. That's my biggest reason for not liking full page spreads or even 3/4 page spreads.
It's a tricky thing to do, but also having that larger presentation makes it more immersive, but it is something that needs to be thought through in the layout and everything. But I was gonna probably early next week, I'm gonna start mailing out the zine, so I'll send one your way so you can get a feel for it. But I'm really impressed at the quality of the work from them, and so it's been really fun packing the orders for the portfolios along with the zines.
Yeah.
But if you end up going that route, I'll say that I've been quite impressed with the quality of their work.
Yeah, that's good. I'll probably end up running just a small edition of the photographs from Colorado that I had taken. I wanted to do that as a sort of surprise present, whatever you want to call it, for my dad for
cool.
Like a culmination of the trip, documenting everything, putting everything together. So I'm slowly working to cull down the 180 photographs down to something a little bit more reasonable, something more manageable. Yeah. So I'm working with David Kingham to do that a little bit, see what his thoughts are on that. So
nice.
Yeah.
That I think that actually, like for me, it was pretty easy when I was putting things together, because it's like, well, I have I can get about 18 pictures out of this. All right, let's try to squeeze them in this minimum number of pages. But, when you're starting out with a large number of images, and now you got to start thinking about how they're going to, work with each other and this and that. I think that actually makes it a fair amount more work.
Yeah. So, and I think the minimum order number that you can do with them is like 10 for SmartPress.
That's actually not bad. No, I was thinking it might be even more than that. So 10 is actually pretty good, where you can even do like some experimental stuff if you need be before dedicating to a whole huge run.
Yeah. So I think what'll end up happening is I'll just do the 10 scenes for this, and once I get them in, just give one to my dad, probably give one to my grandparents, then maybe try and just offload 5 of them, sell 5 of them to make some money back here and there, maybe. But
yeah,
we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I was also thinking, since this episode is going to be airing certainly toward the end of the year. I know the last year, one of the things we talked about toward the end of the year was any sort of goals for the year to come. It's, kind of a cliche thing in podcasts and stuff, but I was thinking about, is there anything that you have in mind for the year ahead?
It's actually something that I was thinking about the other night, as I'm trying to figure out what direction to take everything in, and see how I can kind of culminate my interests in not necessarily a different, but I guess different is the best word to use for it, in a slightly different manner than what I have in the past. So biggest thing is that I want to start putting out ebooks. We talked a little bit about that last week. And yeah, put out ebooks, put out presentations, see how that route takes me. And, but otherwise just trying to enjoy my photography as much as I can, experiment with it, see what all happens. One of the biggest things that I want to put a priority towards is not only like projects, but learning more about the environment around me and the plants and how everything comes together and that kind of deal. Identifying subjects as I photograph them, as you have started to do in Zion and Death Valley. Kind of doing similar things. And there's one project that would be quite big, and it would also be quite a bit different than anything else that I've done before. But I would really like to find and photograph people who have found some sort of solace or healing in nature, whether these are people like Guy Tall, who spends a majority of their time out in nature, or people who are living on homesteads, or any of that kind of thing, and putting together what would essentially culminate into a book of interviews with these people, interviews with researchers and scientists who have studied the healing powers of nature, and mixing together memoir with it, that kind of deal. I have a couple projects like that I think it would be fun to play around with, doing like large format portraits of these individuals, which is definitely where like I'm inspired by the work that Brian Burks is doing with his Articles of Virtue series. So
yeah, that's really cool. And this would be like a portraits of the people in their environment.
Yeah,
that's cool. I've always admired that type of photography because I know that I would be very bad at it. There's a certain eye that it takes. And I'm sure for people that do that, they're like, it's just easy. You just have a person, you put him in the area and this and that, and you take a picture. But like for me, I wouldn't even know where to start. So I've always enjoyed that style of photography, and I think that would be pretty cool. Pair that with some writing, and I could see that being used in a variety of ways, whether it's article online, whether it's a zine, whether it's there's a wide variety of ways to display that work.
Yeah, and I mean that's like my biggest project that I'd like to get started on. But there's also an idea that I have that's a little bit smaller in scale, because I'm right aside of the Appalachian Trail, and finding people who are hiking it or planning to hike it and just meeting with them either on the trail or however, or I don't know exactly how any of this would work out, but photographing them and then photographing along the trail for a bit, spending like a week at a time just camping, hiking the trail, meeting people along it, maybe doing that a couple times through the year and seeing what happens. We'll see. It's all just cool. Plenty of ideas running through my head that, as everybody listens and who has been listening for the past, 2 years, whatever it's been, we all know that this stuff isn't going to actually happen.
I don't know. I think these conversations are a great way of, first of all, helping to come up with some of these ideas, talk through some of these ideas, but also there is a certain degree of I guess accountability that comes with some of the stuff where I think if you talk about something enough, then kind of start taking those steps, and sure enough, things start to unfold. Just like how the zine and then the unpolished ebooks and that sort of stuff, came from the various discussions we've had. And of course, I have no other choice other than to make those become a reality, because I have 16 hungry cats at home now. Now that Fluffy has moved beyond us and is in a box somewhere heading to some wonderful new home.
You got to ship off a couple others accidentally.
Yeah. just a little bit at a time. Get back to just normal levels of cats, like 12 or 13. But yeah. I think putting stuff out there in the world is a great way of at least having some of those projects come to fruition at some point. There's something that I've read from time to time on some cycling forums and stuff. It's some groups on Reddit where I just lurk on there and just read stuff. But there is people that are really new to cycling, and I mean I'm pretty new to road cycling just since like July. But I've obviously ridden bike for a long time. But people are saying, does cycling get any easier? And the usual response is, it doesn't get any easier. You just get faster. Where like, if there's a hill and you're working, you're working so hard to get up that hill. And by the time you're just like, you're winded, your legs are sore, if you've been cycling for a long time, that hill is still going to defeat you to some degree, but it's just because you're climbing it faster. It's just because you're doing better at it. And so I think in some ways there's some parallels with photography for that, where, it's always going to be hard work, but just, you get better, you get more efficient, some of those ideas that you've been thinking of, they come to fruition through all that hard work. So I think there's some parallels to be said about that. But whenever there is that flipping the page of the calendar to the new year, it's always a good point to just, think through things and take a moment of pause just to see where it is that we want to take the work that we have. For me, I don't know that I have any goals necessarily for the new year other than continuing the path that I'm already on and, further exploring some of the areas, revisiting some of the areas. There's some subjects in mind that I would love to see about photographing next year. And that same thought process is what led to some of my favorite images from this year, because, last year at this time, I'm like, there's that one cool, canyon in Death Valley I want to photograph, or this or that. And I made it happen this past year. So I think kind of more of the same, and seeing where the zine format takes me for next year, or all that sort of stuff. Now that some of that groundwork has been laid, I guess. I don't know if that's the right phrase, but I've been packing too many portfolios, and my brain just gets fried after a while.
Yeah. No, but that's plenty of things to look forward in the new year. Let's see what we can all accomplish. See how this all goes. Looking forward to more conversations and hopefully seeing some progress on my end, at least, of putting essays.
It'll be
less
together. Puppy talk and more just dog talk.
It's always puppy talk. They're never not puppies, especially when they're as small as what Emmy and Oliver are. It's puppy talk all the time.
Yeah, perpetual puppy talk. Yeah,
there we go. That's another title episode, another podcast episode. My brain's fried.
I know, me too. I think we're good there. I hope you enjoyed our creative banter. You can learn more about Cody's work by visiting his website, codyschultz.com. And you can find my work at benhorn.com. For further discussion, join us at patreon.com/creativebanter. It's a place where we can interact with you, the listener. And although we greatly appreciate those who contribute by joining a tier, discussions are open to everyone, whether you're a paying member or not. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you around next time.